My breath fogged the windshield as I sat frozen in the parking lot, the weight of the night pressing against my chest. The store's neon sign flickered, casting jagged shadows across the empty asphalt. I was new in this town, a grad student, chasing independence. But something about this evening felt wrong, like the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to move. I'd spent hours in the store, weaving through aisles of pens, notebooks, and cheap kitchenware, piecing together a life I thought I could control. My cart rattled as I pushed it toward my beat-up sedan, the wheels squeaking in rhythm with my heartbeat. The town was small, unfamiliar, its streets a maze I hadn't yet learned. No cell phone left behind with my undergrad life, a foolish declaration of adulthood. I was alone, and the darkness seemed to know it. Loading bags into the trunk, I felt a prickle on my neck, like someone was watching. I glanced around, but the lot was deserted, save for a rusted truck idling at the far end, its headlights dim, almost swallowed by the night. I shook it off, chalking it up to nerves. New places do that to you, make you see threats in every shadow. I slid into the driver's seat, the cold leather creaking under me, and pulled out toward the exit. That's when I saw it. The truck's headlights flared to life and it rolled forward, easing behind me like a predator stalking prey. My stomach twisted. Was he waiting for me? I gripped the wheel, my knuckles whitening, and turned onto the main road, a long stretch of retail lights that promised safety in their glow. But the truck followed, its engine growling low, a constant reminder of its presence. At the first red light, I dared a glance in the rearview mirror. He was there, his face half lit by the dashboard, eyes locked on me. Not a casual glance, not a fleeting look. His stare was unrelenting, hollow, like he was seeing through me to something I couldn't name. My heart thudded, a drumbeat urging me to move. I pressed the gas as the light turned green, hoping distance would break his gaze. It didn't. The road stretched on, shop signs blurring into streaks of color. He stayed close, too close, his bumper kissing the edge of my tailgate. At one light, he pulled beside me. His window rolled down, his head tilted toward me. Don't look, but I did. His eyes were voids, black pits that seemed to suck in the light around them. And his hand moved in his lap, slow, deliberate. My breath caught, a scream trapped in my throat. He was feeding on my fear, and he wanted me to know it. The night swallowed my thoughts, each mile a blur of dread and flickering lights. I wasn't driving anymore. I was running, fleeing from something I couldn't name but felt in my bones. The truck was no longer just a vehicle. It was an extension of him, a hulking beast that breathed exhaust and malice. Its headlights burned into my mirrors, twin suns that refused to set. I tried to focus on the road, on the rhythm of my tires, against the pavement, but his presence was a weight, pressing me into the seat, squeezing the air from my lungs. At every light, he played his game. Sometimes he surged ahead, cutting me off, forcing me to brake hard, my car lurching like a wounded animal. Other times he lingered beside me, his truck swaying closer, metal grazing the edge of my lane. I kept my eyes forward, but I felt him, his gaze crawling over me, peeling back my defenses. He wants me to see him, he wants me to break. I clutched the wheel tighter, my palms slick with sweat, and sang softly to myself, a shaky melody to drown out the terror. One light turned red and he was beside me again. I stared straight ahead, counting the seconds, willing the light to change. But the air grew heavy, and I couldn't resist. I glanced over. His face was closer now, pressed against his window, his eyes unblinking, empty as a starless sky. His hand moved faster, A sickening rhythm and a smirk curled his lips. He's enjoying this. My chest tightened, my vision narrowing to a pinprick. I floored the gas as the light turned, tires screeching, my car fishtailing before it found traction. Wove through traffic, ignoring honks, my mind a mantra. Lose him. Lose him. At an intersection, I signaled left, my blinker ticking like a countdown. At the last second, I swerved right, cutting through a yellow light, cars swerving to avoid me. In the mirror, I saw him hesitate, then barrel through the red, his truck roaring as he closed the gap. How does he know? My heart pounded, each beat a plea for escape. But the road was endless and he was relentless. A memory surfaced. A story my mother told me about a wolf that stalked a village, never attacking, just watching, waiting for someone to falter. I felt like that villager now, alone in the dark with no one to hear my cries. The truck's engine growled louder, closer, and I imagined him laughing, his voice a rasp that blended with the night. I shook my head, forcing the image away. Stay focused. You're not his prey. Time dissolved into a haze of fear and asphalt, each turn a desperate bid for freedom. I remembered a freeway ramp up ahead, a chance to outsmart him. I flicked on my blinker, easing into the merge lane, my hands trembling. Please take the bait. He did, his truck veering up the ramp, its taillights disappearing into the curve. I yanked the wheel, staying on the main road, my breath hitching with hope. I did it. I lost him. Then I saw it. A flash of headlights in my side mirror. His truck burst from the embankment, dirt spraying, tires chewing the ground as he forced his way back. No. He'd driven down the hill, defying logic, defying reason. My hope shattered, replaced by a primal terror that clawed at my throat. This wasn't a man. This was something else, something that wouldn't stop until it had me. At the next light, I tried again, pulling through a hard yellow, weaving between cars. He followed, running another red, his truck a juggernaut that parted traffic like a blade. My hands shook so violently I could barely steer. Think. I remembered the supermarket across town, its bright lights and police station a beacon in my mind. If I could reach it, I'd be safe. I turned up the radio, classic rock, blaring, and forced myself to sing, my voice raw, defiant. You won't break me. The truck stayed glued to my tail, its headlights flooding my car with cold, white light. I kept to the speed limit, refusing to let panic make me crash. Each mile felt like a lifetime, the road stretching into eternity. When I finally saw the supermarket sign, my chest loosened. Just a fraction. I pulled into the lot, tires skidding, and parked near the entrance, where police cruisers gleamed under the lights. I stumbled out, legs buckling, and ran inside, the fluorescent glow a stark contrast to the night's darkness. Inside, the world felt unreal, like a dream stitched together from fragments of safety. I found an officer, my words tumbling out in a frantic rush, the truck, the man, the chase. He listened, scribbling notes, but his eyes held a flicker of doubt. They pulled surveillance footage from the store, and I watched, nausea rising as the truth unfolded. He'd been there the whole time, lurking in the aisles, his shadow trailing mine. In the parking lot, he circled, waiting, his truck a predator, pacing its cage. He'd been close enough to touch, close enough to grab me. I gave them what I could, 6 of 7 digits from his license plate, the make and model of his truck. But it wasn't enough. He said, she said, they said, their voices flat. The footage showed no clear crime, no proof beyond my fear. They escorted me home, one cruiser trailing. But I saw him again, just for a moment. His truck idling at the lot's edge. I pointed, my voice hoarse, but he was gone before they could act. The officer's radio crackled and he shook his head. Probably just a creep, he said. You're safe now, safe. The word felt like a lie. I traded cars with a friend for months, avoiding that store, that road. But his eyes haunted me, those empty voids that seemed to see my soul. I'd wake at night certain he was outside, watching, waiting. The fear became a shadow, always there, always watching. 15 years later, the past clawed its way back. Unbidden, unforgiving. I was curled on my couch, the TV droning, when a true crime show began. A woman named Sandy Jeffers, kidnapped, murdered. Her story was tragic, but it was the mugshot that stopped my heart. Aaron Lee Ski. His face filled the screen. Older but unmistakable. Those same hollow eyes staring through me. My breath caught, the room tilting as the narrator detailed his crimes. He'd killed Sandy just months after he'd chased me. I felt sick, the weight of that night crashing back. It was him. It was always him. I tracked down the investigator, my hands shaking as I dialed. I told her everything, the truck, the chase, the footage. She asked about details not in the reenactment, things only I'd know, the way his hand moved, the model of his truck. I answered, my voice steady despite the storm inside. She took my statement but couldn't confirm it was Ski. He's locked up for life, she said. You don't have to worry anymore. But I did. I worried for Sandy, for the life that might have been saved if they'd listened. I worried for myself, for the nights I still saw his eyes in my dreams, for the part of me he'd stolen. What if I'd fought harder? What if I'd screamed louder? The guilt was a blade cutting deeper with each year. Aaron Lee Ski was gone, but his shadow lingered, a reminder that some monsters don't need to touch you to destroy you. They just need to watch. Have you ever woken in the dead of night, heart pounding, certain something was wrong, the air too heavy, the silence too sharp, as if the world held its breath? I thought my small-town apartment was a refuge, a cocoon where nothing could touch me, but that night as I lay in bed, a presence slithered into my home. Unseen, uninvited, and utterly wrong. It wasn't just a stranger. It was a violation. A nightmare that blurred the line between dream and dread. This is the story of how my sanctuary became my prison. My hometown in the Midwest was a relic of simpler times. Porches sagged under the weight of old rocking chairs. Neighbors swapped stories over picket fences, and doors stayed unlocked, trusting in the town's unspoken pact. I'd left for college years ago, chasing ambition in cities that never slept, but their chaos wore me down. 3 months ago I returned, craving the quiet I'd once taken for granted. I rented a small apartment in one of the town's 2 buildings, a place with peeling paint, creaky floors, and windows that rattled in the wind. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A canvas to rebuild my life. Marcy, my tabby cat, was my anchor. Her soft purrs filled the silence, her green eyes watching me unpack boxes late into the night. I'd spent that Friday arranging shelves, hanging photos, trying to make the space feel like home. By 9 p.m., exhaustion claimed me. I crawled into bed, Marcy curling up at my knees, her warmth a comfort against the world's edges. The apartment's hum lulled me, a gentle rhythm of dripping faucets and distant streetlights. Sleep was my sanctuary, a place where fear couldn't follow. But deep in the night, that sanctuary shattered. A sound, harsh, grating, like metal, dragging across wood, jerked me awake. My eyes snapped open, staring into a darkness so thick it felt alive, pressing against my skin. I lay still, breath caught in my chest, straining to hear. Was it a dream? A trick of a tired mind? But then it came again, a voice, low, guttural, seeping through the walls like poison. Someone was in my home. The realization hit like a blade, slicing through my calm, leaving only raw fear. My heart hammered, each beat a reminder that I was no longer safe. To grasp my terror, picture my apartment's layout, etched into my mind like a map of a battlefield. The front door opens to a narrow hallway, its wallpaper peeling at the edges. To the left, the kitchen, with chipped counters, a humming fridge, and a faucet that dripped in the quiet. To the right, the living room, cluttered with a sagging couch, and a coffee table buried under books. Straight ahead, a corridor stretches to a bathroom on one side, my bedroom on the other, and a spare room at the end, stuffed with boxes and relics of my childhood. It was a simple place, predictable, a fortress until it betrayed me. I slid out of bed, bare feet meeting the cold hardwood floor, each step a test of courage. Marcy stirred, her eyes glinting like twin moons, sensing the shift in the air. Crept to the edge of my bed, heart pounding so loud I feared it would echo. Peering out the bedroom door, I saw it. The front door, ajar, swaying gently as if mocking my trust. A sliver of light from the outside hallway sliced through the dark, casting jagged shadows that danced like ghosts. From the kitchen came that voice again, loud, unhinged, a man's words tumbling over each other in a rant about violence, about death. Stop. Just stop. My body froze, every muscle locked in a vice of fear. The voice wasn't human, not in any way that felt right. Its chaos was a storm, words slurring into threats, a mind unraveling in my home. Was he alone, talking to someone on a phone? Or worse, did he know I was here, awake, listening? The thought was a noose, tightening around my mind, turning my refuge into a cage. I couldn't see him, but his presence was a weight crushing the air, making every breath a struggle. The kitchen's fluorescent light flickered in my mind's eye, casting him in sharp relief. A shadow pacing, wild-eyed, hands clenched. I don't know how long I stood there, a statue carved from panic, my breath shallow and jagged. You need to move. You need to hide. The command broke through, a lifeline in the fog of fear. I turned, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, my fingers clumsy, the cord slipping like a snake. I unplugged it, hands shaking, and dropped to the floor, the wood icy against my skin. The bed frame was high enough to slide under, a narrow gap that felt like my only salvation. I wriggled beneath, Marcy following, her small body pressing against mine, a flicker of warmth in the cold. Under the bed, the world shrank to slats and shadows. Dust coated my skin, clogging my throat, the air thick with the stale scent of neglect. The darkness was suffocating, a blanket that hid me, but also trapped. I dialed 911, my thumb trembling as I pressed the numbers, each tap a prayer. The operator's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos in my chest. "There's a man in my apartment," I whispered, my voice a ghost of itself. "I'm hiding under the bed. I'm safe for now, but he's here." She asked questions. Where was he? What was he doing? But I could barely think, my ears locked on the sounds beyond the door. The man's voice grew louder, a torrent of threats and nonsense. "I'll end it, you'll see," he roared, and I pictured him pacing, eyes wild, hands tearing at the air. Was he alone? Would others come, drawn by his madness? The thought was a splinter in my mind, driving deeper with every word he spat. Marcy's fur brushed my arm, her steady breathing a tether to reality, but even she couldn't quell the panic clawing at my chest. I told the operator he was on a phone, his one-sided rant giving me cover to whisper updates. But then, a new sound, sharp, relentless. The doorbell in the outside hallway, ringing over and over, a taunt that pierced the night. "Come out! I know you're here," he shouted, and my blood froze, my body trembling against the floor. Marcy shifted, her ears twitching at the doorbell's endless chime, her body tense with instinct. "No, stay here," I begged silently. But she was already moving, her small form slipping out from under the bed. "Marcy, no!" I hissed, my whisper a desperate plea barely audible over the pounding in my chest. What if he saw her? What if he hurt her, my only companion in this nightmare? My hands reached out, fingers grazing her tail, but she was gone, a shadow darting into the dark. My heart lurched, terror mingling with guilt. She was all I had, and I'd let her go. I called to her, my voice a strained thread. "Marcy, come back." She paused, her eyes glinting in the doorway, sensing my fear. After an eternity, she crept back under, curling against me, her warmth a fragile shield. I clutched her close, fingers buried in her fur, praying she'd stay silent. The man's voice faded, replaced by heavy footsteps, each one a hammer against my resolve. He was rummaging now, tearing through my things, objects crashing to the floor. I pictured my books scattered, their pages torn, my dishes in shards, my life reduced to debris. The operator's voice droned, asking for updates, but I could barely respond. "How long until the police get here?" I whispered, my voice breaking. She didn't know. 30 minutes to the nearest city, maybe less for highway patrol, but time had stretched into a cruel infinity. In that suffocating space, my mind wandered, seeking escape. I thought of my childhood, of summers spent running through fields, my mother's laughter as she called me home. But the memory twisted, morphing into a dream. Or was it a hallucination? I saw myself as a child, standing in the spare room, surrounded by those toys, but they weren't mine anymore. Their plastic eyes glinted, moving, whispering my name. "You can't hide," they said, their voices blending with the man's, a chorus of dread. I jolted back to reality, my heart racing. The line between dream and waking life blurred, the nightmare folding into itself. The footsteps grew closer, deliberate, each one a countdown to disaster. He was in the spare room now, the one I called, the kids' room for the toys and trinkets I'd stored there, relics of a childhood long gone. "Must be a kid's room," he muttered, his voice low, almost curious, as if he were cataloging my life. The words sent a chill through me. Why did he care? What did he want with my past? I shushed the operator, my breath held, the silence heavy with dread. The air was thick, the dust under the bed clinging to my skin, the scent of old wood and fear choking me. Then the unthinkable. Footsteps, soft but unmistakable, crossed the threshold of my bedroom. From my hiding spot I saw his bare feet, pale and filthy, moving slowly, deliberately. My heart stopped, my lungs burning as I fought to stay silent. He moved to the closet, rifling through my clothes, the hangers clattering like bones. He dumped my hamper onto the floor, the thud of fabric a violation of my space. He's looking for me. The thought was a scream, but I was trapped, a prey animal cowering in the dark. My fingers tightened around Marcy, her warmth the only thing keeping me from dissolving into panic. He turned, his shadow looming, and sat on the bed. The mattress sagged above me, inches from my face, the springs groaning under his weight. He's here. He's right here. The silence was a living thing, pressing against me, broken only by the faint rustle of his movements. Did he know I was beneath him? Was he waiting for me to betray myself? Marcy pressed closer, her heartbeat a faint rhythm against my side. But even she couldn't stop the terror that gripped me. I stopped breathing, my chest tight, my vision blurring. The dust stung my eyes, the air heavy with the scent of sweat and madness. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time had lost meaning. Then movement. He stood, the bed creaking in relief, and walked out, his footsteps fading into the apartment's chaos. I exhaled, shallow and shaky, but the fear didn't leave. It clung to me, a second skin I couldn't shed. The man's voice returned, louder now, shouting about nothing and everything. "It's over! You hear me?" he bellowed, and I pictured him tearing through the spare room, smashing my past into pieces. I whispered to the operator, "He was in my room. Please tell them to hurry." Marcy squirmed and I held her tighter, terrified she'd bolt again. The operator's questions were a lifeline, but they pulled me from the moment, forcing me to split my focus between her voice and the monster in my home. Then, a new sound. Footsteps, heavier, purposeful. A man's voice, calm but firm. "Hey, bud, you're in the wrong house." Relief crashed over me, a tidal wave that left me trembling. The front door closed and I crawled out from under the bed, my body aching, my mind reeling. A female officer appeared, her face kind but professional, her hands steady as she guided me to my feet. I was shaking, tears streaming down my face, the adrenaline and fear colliding in a storm I couldn't control. The dust clung to my skin, the air thick with the scent of ruin, the apartment a stranger to me now. The apartment was a battlefield. Clothes littered the floor, tangled with trash and broken belongings. My books lay scattered, their pages torn, my dishes in shards across the kitchen tiles. The man had piled items in the hallway, as if claiming my life as his own. The officer showed me a winter hat, its brim stained with an unknown substance, thick and foul, a sickly yellow that turned my stomach. She tossed it into a garbage bag, but the image lingered, a symbol of the violation that had seeped into my home. They found him in the spare room, naked, clutching a bottle of lotion, surrounded by my things. He came into my home with nothing but his madness. The thought was a wound, raw and bleeding, a scar I'd carry forever. I couldn't stay in the apartment that night. An officer drove me to my parents' house just down the street. The familiar streetlights now alien, their glow casting long, menacing shadows. Explaining what happened was like reliving it, each word a shard of glass in my throat. My mother's face crumpled, her hands trembling as she pulled me close, her voice thick with worry. My father stood silent, his fists clenched, his eyes dark with a rage he couldn't voice. The warmth of their home felt hollow, a reminder of the safety I'd lost. I sat on their couch, Marcy in my lap, her purring a faint comfort. But the memory of the man's voice, his footsteps, his shadow, played on a loop in my mind. The town buzzed with the story, turning my trauma into gossip. Naked guy in her apartment? That's insane, they'd say at the diner, laughing over coffee while I forced a smile, hiding the terror that clung to me like damp cloth. I wanted to scream, to tell them it wasn't a joke, that it was a violation that had torn my world apart. But I stayed silent, the weight of their words pressing against my chest. I saw their pity in stolen glances, their curiosity in whispered questions, and it made me feel smaller, more exposed, as if the man had taken not just my home but my place in the world. The legal process was a farce, a cruel mockery of justice. A subpoena arrived, its official seal a hollow promise. The court date was postponed, and when I called to check, they'd sent the new summons to the wrong town. A clerical error that felt like a betrayal. How could they not know where I live? The crime happened here. The man pleaded guilty, sentenced to 180 days, plus another 180 for a prior warrant. 8 weeks for shattering my world, for turning my home into a nightmare. Worse, he was a registered sex offender. His comment about the kids' room now a sickening revelation, a clue to a darkness I couldn't fathom. The toys I'd stored there, dolls, action figures, relics of a happier time, felt tainted, their plastic smiles now sinister in my memory. 2 years later, The fear is a constant companion, a shadow that follows me through every door. I've moved 3 times, each new place tainted by the memory of that night. The first was a sterile studio, its bare walls a reminder of my loss, its silence a trigger for panic. The second, a shared house where every creak sent me spiraling, my heart racing as I checked locks and windows. Now I'm in a new apartment, its walls unfamiliar, its corners too dark. Sleep eludes me, my nights spent listening for footsteps, for that doorbell's chime, for the voice that still haunts my dreams. Marcy is still with me, her purring a faint comfort, but even she can't erase the nightmares. His voice, his shadow, the weight of the bed above me, the toys that whispered in the dark. The man was released early, vanishing from parole and the sex offender registry. I check for him online, a ritual that feeds my fear. Each search a reminder that he's out there, unaccounted for, a ghost who could return. The system failed me, but the failure runs deeper. It's the loss of safety, the knowledge that monsters don't need masks to terrify. They can walk into your home, sit on your bed, and leave scars no one else can see. I try to reclaim my life, to find peace in small moments. Marcy's warmth, a sunny day, a locked door. But the fear lingers, a stain that won't wash out. If you're listening, lock your doors, check your windows, and pray the shadows in. Your house are just shadows, because once they're not, nothing will ever feel safe again. Have you ever felt someone's gaze crawl under your skin, like they're peeling back your soul layer by layer? That's how it started with Lucy. Not a scream, not a shadow in the dark, just a girl on a bus, her head heavy on my arm, her breath too steady for sleep. I was 16, awkward, hard of hearing, and desperate for connection in a world that felt too loud and too quiet all at once. The bus rumbled through the gray dusk of a small-town autumn, its windows fogged with the breath of tired passengers. I sat near the back, my headphones dangling, music drowned by the hum of the engine. That's when she appeared, slipping into the seat beside me like she'd always belonged there. Her hair was a mess of dark curls, catching the faint glow of the streetlights outside. She didn't speak at first, just leaned into me, her cheek pressed against my shoulder. I froze, my heart stuttering, not from attraction, but from the strangeness of it. Who falls asleep on a stranger like that? I let her stay, though, too shy to nudge her awake, too curious to look away. Her face was soft in the dim light, lips parted slightly, but her stillness felt wrong, like a photograph held too close to a flame, edges curling inward. When the bus lurched to a stop, her eyes snapped open, and she stared at me, not with embarrassment, not with a smile, but with a look I couldn't place. It was sharp, like she was measuring me, carving my outline into her memory. Then she was gone, shambling off into the evening mist, leaving me with a chill I couldn't shake. Feel that unease creeping in? Hold on to it, it's your anchor. The next day, the bus felt different, heavier, like the air had thickened overnight. I took my usual spot, expecting solitude, but there they were. Lucy and her friends, sprawled across the seats like they'd claimed the entire back row. Their laughter was loud, jagged, cutting through the low drone of the bus. I hesitated, my sneakers scuffing the grimy floor, but one of them, a girl with bright red braids, waved me over. "Hey, you're the arm pillow guy, right?" she said, grinning. The others snickered and my face burned. Lucy just watched, her eyes glinting like polished glass, reflecting everything but revealing nothing. I sat down, awkward and out of place, my backpack clutched like a shield. They were relentless, peppering me with questions. Where was I from? What music did I like? Did I have a girlfriend? I answered in stammers, my hearing aids buzzing faintly, catching only half their words. Lucy stayed quiet, her gaze never leaving. Me? It wasn't affection, not yet. It was something hungrier, like she was cataloging every stutter, every nervous laugh. By the end of the ride, I was part of their orbit, pulled in by their energy, their approval. They called me Bus Guy, a nickname that felt like a badge, a proof I belonged somewhere. But Lucy, she didn't call me anything. She just smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of her lips, and I felt it again. That chill, wrapping around, my spine like a vine. You're starting to see her now, aren't you? Not just a girl, but a shadow that doesn't quite fit. Days turned into weeks, and the bus became our world. Lucy's friends were loud, chaotic, but she was the center, the quiet pulse that held them together. I learned her name, or thought I did, when she mumbled it one day, her voice soft against the rumble of the engine. Lucy, I repeated, testing the sound. But she didn't confirm, didn't nod. My hearing aids betrayed me, garbling her words, and I let it slide, too embarrassed to ask again. She started sitting closer, her knee brushing mine, her fingers grazing my arm when she laughed. I was flattered, overwhelmed, a kid drowning in the thrill of being noticed. But there were moments, fleeting, jagged, when her touch felt too deliberate, her laughter too sharp, like a blade hidden in silk. One evening, as the bus rolled through a rain-soaked town, she leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. "Tell me something real," she said, her voice low, almost a command. "Tell her something real, dig deep, let her in." I hesitated, then spilled a story about my childhood, about the time I got lost in the woods behind my house, the fear so thick I could taste it. Her eyes lit up, not with empathy, but with something else. Greed, maybe, like she was collecting pieces of me. When I finished, she didn't share anything back, just nodded, her fingers tightening on my wrist, and said, "That's messed up." The words felt like a slap, casual but cutting, and I laughed it off, ignoring the knot in my gut. "You're feeling that knot too, aren't you? It's telling you to run, but you won't. Not yet. What's it like to be seen, truly seen, by someone who seems to know you better than you know yourself?" Lucy had a way of making me feel like I was the only person in the world, her eyes locking onto mine as if she could read the secrets I didn't even know I kept. But there was something else in that gaze, something that made my skin prickle, like I was a puzzle she was determined to solve, piece by jagged piece. The bus ride stretched into weeks, then months, and our little world, cramped seats, flickering overhead lights, the sour tang of diesel, became a stage where Lucy directed every scene. I was her audience, her actor, her captive, and I didn't even realize it. Each afternoon, the bus groaned to life, carrying us through streets lined with sagging trees and houses that seemed to lean toward the road, watching. Lucy's friends were always there, their chatter a constant hum. But she was the one who mattered. She'd slide into the seat beside me, her shoulder brushing mine. Her scent, a mix of cheap vanilla perfume and something sharper, like burnt sugar, filling the air. "Lean closer. Let her pull you in." She'd ask questions, endless questions. Her voice soft but insistent. What was my first heartbreak? Did I ever feel alone, even in a crowd? What scared me most when I was a kid? I'd answer, my words tumbling out, eager to please, to keep her attention. My hearing aids buzzed faintly, catching the cadence of her voice but missing the edges, the subtle shifts that might have warned me. I told her things I'd never told anyone, about the nights I'd lie awake, convinced the shadows in my room were alive, about the time I cried in the school bathroom because I couldn't hear the teacher's instructions. Each confession felt like handing her a piece of myself, and she took them all. her fingers tracing idle patterns on the back of my hand. But when I asked about her family, her dreams, her fears, she'd deflect with a laugh, a quick change of subject, or a cryptic, "You don't need to know that." Why doesn't she share? Why does it feel like she's hiding? I brushed it off, telling myself she was just private, mysterious, the kind of girl who kept her cards close. But the imbalance gnawed at me, a quiet ache that grew with every one-sided conversation. One evening, as the bus wound through a fog-choked suburb, she leaned in, her breath hot against my cheek. "Tell me about your worst day," she said, her eyes glinting like wet stones. I hesitated, my mind flashing to a memory I'd buried deep. A fight with my mom, her voice sharp as she told me I'd never fit in, the words cutting deeper than I'd ever admitted. I started to speak, my voice low, but Lucy interrupted, her tone sharp. "That's so messed up," she said, before I'd even finished. Her words landed like a slap, casual but stinging, and I froze, my story dangling unfinished. She laughed, nudging my shoulder, but there was no warmth in it. "What? You're too sensitive," she teased, and I forced a smile, my stomach twisting. "Swallow it, don't let her see it hurts." The bus rattled on, its windows streaked with rain, and I stared out at the blurred world, trying to ignore the weight of her gaze. She kept talking, her voice weaving through my thoughts, pulling me back. "You're so easy to read," she said, her fingers brushing my wrist, lingering too long. "I bet I could guess everything about you." Her confidence was magnetic, intoxicating, but it left me feeling exposed, like she'd peeled back my skin and found something I didn't want her to see. I wanted to ask her to stop, to give me space, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, letting her words fill the silence, letting her take up all the air. There were moments, though, when I glimpsed something darker. One day I caught her staring at me while I was reading, her eyes unblinking, her expression blank like a mask had slipped. When I looked up, she smiled, quick and practiced, but the shift was jarring, like waking from a dream you can't quite remember. Another time, she grabbed my phone, scrolling through my messages with a casual possessiveness that made my chest tighten. "Who's this?" she asked, pointing to a text from a classmate. I mumbled an explanation, but her eyes narrowed, and for a moment I thought I saw anger, raw and unguarded. "She's just curious. Don't overthink it." But the air felt heavier after that, the bus's hum a low warning I couldn't quite hear. Lucy's friends noticed too, though they never said it outright. The girl with red braids stopped sitting near us, her laughter quieter, her glances wary. Another friend, a lanky guy with a lip piercing, muttered something about Lucy being intense one day, then avoided my eyes. I wanted to ask what he meant, but Lucy was always there, her presence a barrier, her hand on my arm a silent claim. "You're hers now. There's no going back." I told myself it was normal, that this was what it meant to be close to someone. But at night, alone in my room, I'd replay our conversations, her interruptions, her sharp edges, and the ache in my chest would grow, whispering truths I wasn't ready to face. "You're starting to feel it, aren't you? That pull, that trap, closing around you like a dream you can't escape." Lucy was rewriting me line by line, and I was letting her too, caught up in the thrill of being wanted to see the cost. The bus kept rolling, the world outside a blur, and I kept answering her questions, giving her more of myself, not knowing that each piece I gave was one I'd never get back. Can you feel the moment when a touch stops being kind? When a word becomes a weapon? With Lucy, it wasn't a single moment, but a slow, suffocating descent, like sinking into a lake where the water grows colder with every inch. The bus, once a haven of laughter and stolen glances, became a cage, its chipped seats and rattling windows framing her cruelty. I was 16, still clinging to the hope that her attention meant love, but Lucy was carving me into something else, something smaller, something hers. Her words, her hands, her eyes, they all turned sharp and I didn't know how to stop it. It started with her humor, crude and cutting, like a blade disguised as a joke. We'd be on the bus, the air thick with the scent of wet coats and exhaust, and she'd lean in, her voice low. "You're such a mess," she'd say, smirking, her fingers flicking my ear hard enough to sting. I'd laugh, my cheeks burning, telling myself it was playful, that I was just too soft. Laugh it off. Don't. Let her see you flinch. But her jabs grew bolder, homing in on my insecurities with uncanny precision. She'd mock my hearing aids, calling them robot ears in front of her friends, their laughter echoing in my skull. She'd tease my clothes, my stutter, my quiet moments, each word a pinprick that left me bleeding inside. When I dared to push back, her eyes would narrow, her voice dripping with scorn. "Can't take a joke? Grow up. Swallow it, keep her happy." And I did every time, my pride dissolving in the acid of her disapproval. The physicality came later, creeping in so gradually I barely noticed until it was too late. At first it was playful, a shove to my shoulder, a tug on my hair, her nails grazing my arm a little too hard. I'd wince and she'd giggle, her eyes bright with something I couldn't name. She's just teasing, it's what couples do. But the touches grew heavier, more deliberate. One afternoon, as the bus lurched through a pothole-riddled street, I told a dumb joke, hoping to make her smile. Her response was a sharp elbow to my ribs, the pain blooming hot and sudden. I gasped, doubling over, and she laughed, loud and unapologetic. "That was awful," she said, her hand lingering on my arm, squeezing just enough to warn me. The other passengers glanced over, their eyes sliding away, and I felt a flush of shame like I'd earned it. The worst came in the school hallway, a memory that still claws at me in the dark. It was after class, the corridors buzzing with students, the air heavy with the smell of sweat and cheap perfume. I was walking with Lucy, trying to keep up with her rapid pace, when I made another joke, something silly, harmless. Her face twisted, and before I could react, she shoved me hard against the wall. My back hit the concrete with a dull thud, pain spiking through my spine. She leaned in, her breath hot on my face, and shoved me again, her hands like iron. "You're so embarrassing," she hissed, her voice low but venomous. The sound I made, a choked, pathetic yelp, made her laugh, a sharp, cruel sound that echoed in my ears. People passed by, their footsteps a blur, but no one stopped, no one looked. You're alone. No one cares. I stood there, pinned by her gaze, my chest tight, my world shrinking to the weight of her hands and the sting of her words. At night, alone in my room, I'd trace the bruises, faint at first, then darker, blooming like storm clouds under my skin. I'd tell myself it wasn't abuse, that Lucy was just passionate, that I was overreacting. But the memories kept piling up, each one heavier than the last. The time she grabbed my wrist so hard it left red marks, her nails digging in as she whispered, "Don't make me mad." The time she flicked my forehead repeatedly, each snap a small explosion of pain, until I begged her to stop. The time she pushed me into a locker, her smile wide and empty, like she was testing how far she could go. "You can take it. You have to." I'd lie awake, the shadows on my ceiling twisting into her face, and I'd wonder why I stayed. Why I let her rewrite me into someone I didn't recognize. There was a day, though, when I tried to fight back. We were on the bus, the sky outside a bruised purple, rain hammering the windows. Lucy was in one of her moods, her voice sharp as she tore into me for something small. Maybe I'd forgotten to text her back. Maybe I'd looked at someone else too long. "You're so useless," she said, her hand darting out to pinch my arm hard. The pain sparked something in me, a flicker of defiance. "Stop it, Lucy," I said, my voice louder than I meant, trembling but firm. The bus went quiet, her friend's eyes wide, the air crackling with tension. For a moment I thought I'd won, that I'd reclaimed something. But Lucy's face changed. Her smile vanished, her eyes cold and unyielding, like a predator sizing up its prey. "You don't get to tell me what to do," she said, her voice low, each word a blade. She leaned closer, her hand hovering near my face, and I flinched, waiting for the strike that didn't come. "Don't challenge her, you'll lose." The rest of the ride was silent, her gaze burning into me, and I knew I'd pay for it later. That night I sat on my bed, my knees pulled to my chest, and let myself remember a time before Lucy. A summer day when I'd run through the fields behind my house, the grass soft under my feet, the world wide and safe. I was a kid then, unbroken, unaware of how someone could take your light and twist it into something dim and fragile. Hold on to that memory. It's all you have left. But even that memory felt tainted now, overshadowed by Lucy's voice, her touch, her control. She was inside me, her hooks deep, and I didn't know how to pull them out. "You're trapped now, aren't you?" Just like I was, caught in her web, waiting for the next strike. Lucy's cruelty wasn't just in her actions. It was in how she made me believe I deserved it. How she turned my own heart against me. The bus kept rolling, the world outside a blur, and I kept sitting beside her, letting her break me, not knowing that the worst was still to come. What does it feel like to realize the person you loved was never real? It's not a lightning bolt, not a scream in the dark. It's a slow unraveling, like pulling a thread until the fabric of your world falls apart. With Lucy, the truth came in fragments, each one sharper than the last, until I couldn't ignore the monster wearing her face. The bus, the school, the air itself. They all turned against me, her shadow stretching longer with every step I took. To break free. I was 16, broken but not yet defeated, and I thought I could escape her. You think you can escape, don't you? Hold that hope tight. It won't last. The cracks started small, but they grew fast. One evening, as the bus groaned through a rain-slicked town, Lucy was quieter than usual, her eyes fixed on her phone. I leaned over, trying to catch her attention, and saw it. A gallery of photos, dozens of them, all of me. Me reading, me staring. Out the window, me laughing with her friends, my face unaware and unguarded. Look closer. See what she's taken. My stomach churned, a cold sweat prickling my skin. "What's this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She turned to me, her smile wide and empty, like a doll's. "Just you," she said, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "I like looking at you." Her excitement was worse than the photos themselves, a glee that made my blood run cold. I wanted to grab the phone, delete them, but her fingers tightened around it, and I saw something in her eyes, a warning, a dare. I tried to shrug it off, to tell myself it was just her being quirky, but the unease lingered, a weight in my chest that grew heavier each day. Then came the bus ride that broke me open. We were sitting together, her head resting on my chest, her breathing slow and steady. I thought she was asleep, her warmth almost comforting, a rare moment of peace. But after 30 minutes, as the bus neared our stop, I nudged her gently. "Wake her. End the moment." Her eyes opened, sharp and alert, and she looked at me, her voice flat. "I wasn't asleep. No explanation, no softness, just those words, cold and deliberate, like she'd been watching me the whole time, studying me while I thought she was vulnerable. My skin crawled, the air in the bus suddenly too thick, too warm. She's always watching. Always. The final blow came at school, a moment that shattered everything. Lucy was showing off an award, some certificate from a club, her face beaming with pride. I leaned in, happy for her, until I saw the name on it. Not Lucy. Someone. A name I didn't recognize, printed in bold black letters beside her photo. Who is she? Who have you been loving? My heart stopped, my breath catching in my throat. Lucy, what's this? I asked, my voice trembling. She froze, her smile faltering, and for a moment I saw panic in her eyes, raw and unfiltered. Then, she laughed a forced, brittle sound and snatched the certificate away. Just a typo, she said, but her voice was too quick, too tight. I didn't believe her. I couldn't. The girl I'd given my heart to, the girl who'd broken me piece by piece, wasn't who she said she was. I knew I had to end it, but fear held me back. Lucy's temper, her hands, her eyes, they were a storm I wasn't sure I could survive. It took 3 weeks of sleepless nights, my room a prison of flickering shadows and racing thoughts, before I found the courage. We were on the bus, the sky outside a dull gray, the air heavy with the threat of rain. She was ranting about something, trivial, her voice sharp, her hand gripping my arm too tightly. I took a breath, my heart pounding, and said, "We're done, Lucy." Say it. Mean it? The words felt like spitting out glass, painful but necessary. Her face went blank, her eyes boring into mine. And for a moment I thought she'd hit me. Instead, she leaned closer, her voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this," she said, each word a promise. The bus seemed to shrink, the other passengers fading into a blur, and I felt her words settle into me, a poison I couldn't shake. The aftermath was immediate, relentless. Lucy didn't disappear, she multiplied. She moved to a seat a few rows behind me on the bus, her gaze a constant pressure, like a finger pressing into a bruise. I'd feel her eyes on me, unblinking, as I stared at the floor, the walls, anything. But her. Don't look back. She wants you to. One day, as I stepped off the bus, I caught her standing by the stop, motionless, watching me walk to my car. Her stare followed me, heavy and unyielding, even as I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. Another time, she boarded the bus and locked eyes with me for a full 20 seconds, her expression unreadable, her steps slow and deliberate as she passed. I wanted to scream, to tell her to stop, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the fear that she'd never let me go. At school, her presence lingered like a ghost. I'd see her in the hallways, always at a distance, her head tilted as if she was studying me. My friends, her friends really, started to drift away, their conversations clipped, their eyes avoiding mine. I overheard one of them whisper about Lucy's freakout after our breakup, but no one told me more and I was too scared to ask. You're alone now. She's made sure of it. My world was shrinking, the bus and school no longer safe, the air thick with her shadow. I'd lie awake at night, my hearing aids off, the silence deafening, and I'd imagine her outside my window, her eyes glinting in the dark, waiting for me to break. You feel her now, don't you? She's not just in the story, she's in your head, watching, waiting. Breaking up with Lucy wasn't freedom. It was the start of a new kind of prison, one where every glance, every shadow carried her name. I thought I'd escaped, but I was wrong. She was only getting started. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air change? like someone's been waiting for you, hidden in plain sight. Lucy didn't just haunt my memories. She invaded my reality, turning every safe space into trap. A year and a half after our breakup, I thought I'd left her behind, buried in the haze of high school and bus rides. I was wrong. She found me again, not with a scream or a threat, but with a smile that cut deeper than any blade. The retail store where I worked, a cramped maze of fluorescent lights and jingling Christmas music, became her new stage, and I was her unwilling star. She's here. She's always been here. Run. I'd graduated, traded the bus for a beat-up car, and taken a cashier job at a local shop, hoping the monotony would dull the edges of my past. The store was small, its aisles cluttered, with holiday decorations, the air thick with the scent of pine candles and stale coffee. I stood behind the counter, scanning items, forcing smiles for customers, trying to rebuild a life where I wasn't afraid of my own shadow. Then she walked in. Look at her. See her for what she is. It was a cold December night, the store buzzing, with last-minute shoppers when I saw her. Lucy, her dark curls unmistakable, her eyes locking onto mine like a missile finding its target. She didn't say a word, just grabbed a pack of gum from the front and stepped into my line, her gaze never wavering. Her movements were slow, deliberate, her body swaying slightly, like a child too excited to stand still. My hands fumbled with the scanner, my heart racing, the beep of each item a countdown to something I couldn't name. I rang her up in silence, my throat tight, praying she'd leave. She didn't. She stood there staring, her smile widening, and I felt the world tilt, the store's lights too bright, the music too loud. I glanced at the other cashier, a guy named Mike, hoping for backup, but he just raised an eyebrow and mouthed, "Weird vibe. You're alone again. No one will help." Lucy paid, her fingers brushing mine as she handed over the cash, her touch cold and deliberate. Then she was gone, the bell above the door jingling in her wake, but the air didn't lighten. It felt heavier, like she'd left a piece of herself behind, waiting. She became a regular, her visits unpredictable but relentless. Some days she'd linger in the aisles, her shadow flickering at the edge of my vision. Others she'd march straight to my register, buying nothing but a single item, a candy bar, a magazine, a cheap keychain, her eyes boring into me as I scanned. My co-workers noticed, their whispers growing uneasy. "That girl's creepy," one said, a girl with blue hair who worked the evening shift. Another, an older guy named Tom, said she gave him bad energy, but Lucy never hid her intent. One day, as the blue-haired girl rang her up, Lucy leaned in, her voice clear and calm. "I'm here for him," she said, describing me without saying my name, my height, my jacket, my nervous smile. The girl told me later, her face pale, and I felt a chill settle into my bones, like frost creeping across a window. The store became a minefield, every shift a gamble. I'd hear her before I saw her, the soft tap of her boots, the rustle of her coat. Sounds that shouldn't have stood out but did, like a predator's footsteps in the dark. "Listen, she's closer than you think," my coworkers started warning me over the radio, their voices low. "She's in aisle 5, or she's by the front again." But Lucy was clever, slipping out of sight when I looked, leaving only the echo of her presence. I started to feel her even when she wasn't there, my neck prickling as I scanned items, my heart jumping at every customer's shadow. The store's mirrors, meant to catch shoplifters, became my obsession, my eyes darting to them, searching for her reflection among the crowd. Her presence took its toll not just on me, but on everyone. A new cashier, a guy who looked a little like me, quit after a month. He'd caught Lucy staring at him, her eyes unblinking, her lips curved in that same empty smile. "It's not worth it," he told me, his voice shaking before he handed in his apron. I wanted to ask him more, to know what she'd done, but he was gone before I could. "She's breaking them too. You're not special. The manager's obsessed with sales, ignored our complaints, their greed a wall we couldn't breach. Lucy was a customer, they said, and customers were king. But she wasn't a customer, she was a hunter, and I was her prey. The last time I saw her in the store was a night I'll never forget. It was late, the store nearly empty, the Christmas lights casting long, jagged shadows across the floor. I was in the back, helping a co-worker named Sarah load carts with stock, the air heavy with the smell of cardboard and dust. We were near the back entrance, the glass doors revealing the dark parking lot beyond. I stepped away to shelve some items, my mind elsewhere, when I returned and saw her. Lucy standing 40 feet away, motionless, her eyes fixed on the back entrance. She's here. She's always here. I froze, my breath catching, my body rooted to the spot. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, her silhouette stark against the night. Time stretched, seconds bleeding into minutes, until she turned and walked away, her steps brisk like a predator retreating to plan its next strike. Sarah was quieter after that, her usual chatter gone. 3 days later, she quit. Her goodbye. Hug so tight it left my ribs aching. She didn't say it was Lucy, but I knew. She's taking them all one by one. I left the store soon after, trading retail for a job where I wouldn't face customers. The phone's glow cut through the darkness of my room, its light a beacon in the quiet night. Brian's message pulsed on the screen, each word dripping with charm that sent a shiver down my spine. But the air felt wrong, too heavy, too still, as if the world was holding its breath, warning me of a trap I couldn't yet see. I'd been on Tinder for weeks, swiping through faces in a new city, chasing sparks that never caught fire. Brian was different. His profile was a puzzle of wit and warmth, his photos showing a man with sharp glasses, dark hair, and a smile that felt like a promise. We messaged for days, his words weaving a spell. Funny, thoughtful, the kind of conversation that made time vanish. When I suggested a date at my favorite coffee shop, his reply was instant, eager. "I can't wait to meet you," he wrote, and I felt a flutter, imagining shared laughs, the clink of coffee cups, the start of something real. The plan was clear. I'd drive to his place at 6 p.m., pick him up, and we'd head to the shop. I slipped into a jacket, my nerves a mix of excitement and doubt, and texted him as I left. His reply came fast, almost urgent, but I pushed the thought away. Just nerves, I told myself, sliding into my car. The city lights streaked past, neon, signs blurring into a dreamlike haze, and I turned up the radio, letting music drown the unease creeping up my spine. The streets were alive, but each turn took me deeper into a quieter world, where shadows lingered longer, and the night seemed to watch. Halfway there, my phone rang. Brian's name lit up the screen, and I answered, expecting a quick hello. His voice was off, rushed, edged with something I couldn't place, not the playful tone I'd built in my mind from our texts. "Hey, change of plans," he said. "I'm exhausted. Can you come over instead? We'll watch a show, maybe order takeout." My fingers tightened on the wheel, a cold knot forming in my stomach. A first date at his house wasn't what I wanted. I needed lights, crowds, safety. "I'd rather go out," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Come on," he pressed, irritation seeping through. "Don't be a buzzkill, it'll be fun." The word buzzkill stung, sharp and dismissive, and a chill settled over me. Why is he pushing so hard? But I brushed it off, telling myself he was just tired, that I was reading too much into it. "Okay," I said, turning toward his address. The city faded into suburban streets, houses dark and silent, their windows like closed eyes. The night closed in, a heavy curtain, and my heart beat faster, a rhythm I couldn't ignore. When I pulled into his driveway, the porch light flickered, casting jagged shadows across the lawn. Brian stood at the door, his silhouette tall, motionless, like he'd been waiting for hours. He greeted me with a smile, but it was too wide, too polished, like a mask he'd practiced. He looked like his photos, pale skin, dark hair, glasses, glinting in the dim light. But there was something off, a tension in his posture that set my nerves on edge. "Come in," he said, his voice smooth but hollow. And I followed, my steps hesitant, like stepping into a dream I wasn't sure I could wake from. The living room was dim, lit by the blue glow of a TV where a roommate sat, lost in a video game. The air smelled of stale pizza and something sharper, metallic. I introduced myself to the roommate, hoping for a moment of normalcy, but he barely nodded, his eyes fixed on the screen. Brian's voice cut through, sharp and impatient. "Let's go to my room," he said, already moving toward a hallway. I glanced at the roommate, but he didn't look up, and I followed Brian, my heart sinking with each step. His bedroom door opened slowly, and the air shifted, thick with the scent of melted wax and something sour, like decay. What is this place? Candlelight flickered across the walls, casting trembling shadows that seemed to move on their own. My breath caught as I saw them. Altars, dozens of them, scattered across the room like shrines to something unholy. On a shelf by the bed, a cloth doll sat, its eyes sewn shut, its hands missing, surrounded by candles that dripped wax like blood. On the floor, a glass jar held a yellow liquid, murky and still, ringed by animal skulls with hollow sockets that stared back. A dagger rested beside a cat's skull, its blade catching the light sharp enough to cut through the silence. My heart pounded, a drum beat urging me to run, but my feet stayed rooted, trapped by a mix of fear and fascination. This isn't real, it can't be. The room felt alive, its shadows pulsing, the air pressing against my chest. I forced a smile, my voice trembling. "What are these?" I asked, gesturing to an altar. Brian's face darkened, his eyes narrowing to slits. "I'll tell you later," he said, his tone cold, final. I nodded, swallowing hard, but the candlelight seemed to dim, the shadows growing longer, twisting into shapes that whispered at the edge of my vision. I pointed to another altar, desperate to keep him talking, to anchor myself in something normal. "Don't touch that," he snapped, his voice a blade, his face contorted with rage. I was 4 feet away, nowhere near it. But his anger was a physical force slamming into me. My throat tightened, fear blooming like poison. He's not right. He's dangerous. In an instant, his scowl melted into a smile, warm and disarming, like a switch had flipped. "Sit with me," he said, patting the couch. "Let's watch something." The shift was dizzying, like falling from a nightmare into a false dawn. I sat, my body tense, my mind screaming to leave. But I stayed, clinging to the hope that I was overreacting, that this was just a strange hobby, a quirk I could overlook. We talked, and he softened, his voice matching the charm of his texts. He shared stories, his job, his travels, his dreams, and I let myself relax just a fraction, the altars fading to the corners of my sight. But the room never let me forget, its shadows shifting, the candles flickering like eyes watching from the dark. As we spoke, I suggested inviting his roommate to join us, hoping another person would break the suffocating tension. Brian's face twisted, his eyes flashing with venom. "That guy's a parasite," he spat, his words dripping with hate. I'd rather die than have him in here. The sudden rage sent a shiver through me, my pulse racing. He's unraveling. He changed the subject, his hand brushing my thigh, his voice low, possessive. "You're so beautiful," he said, his fingers lingering, pressing harder. My skin crawled, my body screaming to pull away, but I froze, trapped by the weight of his gaze. I stood mumbling about needing water, desperate for space to breathe. As I moved, his hand shot out, slapping my backside with a force that burned. "Don't take long," he said, his tone playful but laced with menace. I forced a laugh, my legs trembling as I stumbled out of the room. In the kitchen, I fumbled for a glass, my hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The roommate was asleep on the couch, the TV casting a ghostly glow over his face, and I realized I was alone with Brian's darkness. What if he's more than strange? What if those altars are for something real? I thought of horror films, of rituals and curses, and my fear spiraled. What if he's dangerous? What if he knows where I live? I filled the glass, the water cold against my lips, and forced myself to return, each step heavier, like wading through a swamp. Back in the room, Brian sat cross-legged on the couch, eyes closed, his lips moving in a silent chant. Is he praying? Summoning something? The air grew thicker, the candlelight dimmer, as if the room was closing in. I called his name, my voice barely a whisper, but he didn't respond. I tried again, louder, and his eyes snapped open, cold and distant, like a stranger wearing his face. He uncrossed his legs and turned to the TV, ignoring me, as if I'd imagined the whole thing. He's not human. He can't be. I sat beside him, my body rigid, every sense on high alert. He acted normal again, chatting about the show, his voice calm, but it was a mask, thin and brittle, ready to crack. My mind raced, searching for a way out. Don't anger him. Don't let him see. Your fear. I needed a plan. But panic clouded my thoughts, a storm I couldn't navigate. On impulse, I tried to mirror his playfulness, giving his arm a light tap as he reached for his phone. It was a mistake. He spun, his hand swatting mine away, his body lunging toward me. His fist rose inches from my face, his eyes wide, emotionless, like a predator sizing up its kill. My heart stopped, time stretching into a single endless moment. He's going to hit me. Then he froze, his fist trembling, and uncurled his hand. Cold fingers gripped my face, squeezing until it hurt. "You're just so cute," he said, his voice mocking, like scolding a child. He pulled me in, forcing a kiss, his lips rough, invasive, stealing my breath. I wanted to scream, to push him away, but fear paralyzed me, locking my limbs. His kiss was a violation, a claim, and I felt dirty, small, powerless. He pulled back, smiling that false smile, and turned to the TV as if nothing had happened. He's a monster. The altars loomed larger, their shadows twisting into claws, whispering secrets I didn't want to know. I couldn't stay. I stood, my voice shaking, but firm. "I'm not feeling well," I said. "I need to go home." His face darkened, his jaw tightening. "Stay," he urged, his tone sharp, almost a command. "You'll feel better." I shook my head, insisting, my heart pounding as I grabbed my jacket. He relented, but his eyes burned with anger, following me to the door like a predator tracking its prey. I mumbled a goodbye, promising to text later, knowing I never would. I got in my car, hands trembling as I locked the doors and drove away, the night swallowing his house in my rearview mirror. My body shook, sweat beading on my forehead, relief battling with terror. What if he comes after me? What if he knows? The drive home was a blur, the city lights streaking like tears. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting his car to appear, his cold eyes glinting in the dark. When I reached my apartment, I locked every door, checked every window, my hands still shaking as I sank to the floor. The memory of his touch, his kiss, clung to me like a stain, and the altars haunted my thoughts. Their images burned into my mind. What were they for? Who was he really? I blocked Brian's number, deleted my Tinder profile, and hid my photos. But the fear didn't leave. Every noise in my apartment, every shadow on the street, felt like him, waiting, watching. I'd wake from nightmares of candlelit shrines, of his mocking smile and empty eyes. The world felt darker, each stranger a potential threat, each smile a mask hiding something sinister. I stopped dating, stopped trusting, the memory of that night a scar I couldn't erase. Months passed, but the fear lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. I'd see his face in crowds, hear his voice in the quiet, and wonder if he was out there planning, plotting. The altars were a mystery I'd never solve, but they were real as his rage, as real as the danger I'd escaped. Brian was gone, but he'd left something behind. A piece of my safety, my trust, my peace, stolen by a night I'd never forget. Have you ever walked into a place that felt wrong? Its air thick with secrets you weren't meant to know. I thought a secluded island Airbnb would be my refuge, a quiet haven to finish my novel and escape the ghosts of my past. But the moment I stepped inside, the house saw me, its shadows moved, its silence spoke. Its rules bound me like a noose. Every choice I made broke something, pulling me deeper into a nightmare where my guilt became the monster. This is the story of how I lost myself in a place where reality and dread became one. The island was a scar on the ocean's surface, a jagged outcrop off Cape Cod, where the world seemed to dissolve into mist. A single cottage stood defiant against the wind, its white clapboard peeling, its windows dark like eyes that had seen too much. Across the water, a lighthouse loomed, its beam cutting through the fog, a lonely pulse in the void. I'd found the place on Airbnb, a plus rental, its photos promising solitude, a writer's dream. At $3,000 for a week, it was a gamble. But my second novel was overdue. The publisher's emails a relentless tide, and the memories of my daughter, Leslie, were a weight I couldn't bear in the city's chaos. The ferry ride was a descent into gray, the sea churning, the mainland fading like a memory I'd never reclaim. I stepped onto the dock, my boots grinding against the stone walkway, each step heavy with intent. This was my last chance to finish the book, to prove I wasn't defined by my failures. The cottage grew closer, its silhouette stark against the stormy sky, its door weathered but solid, a threshold to salvation or something else. I gripped the doorknob, my fingers cold, my mind already tracing the novel's final chapters. The air was sharp with salt, the wind carrying whispers of the sea, a song both beautiful and mournful. I thought of Leslie, her laughter echoing in my mind, a sound I hadn't heard since the day she died. 2 years ago, she was struck by a car, a day I was supposed to pick her up but didn't. Lost in my first novel's pages, the guilt was a shadow, always there, darkening every word I wrote. This island was my escape, a place to bury that pain, to find the words that had eluded me. But as I turned the knob, a chill ran through me, a sense that the house was waiting, its silence not empty but alive, watching, ready to claim me. The door opened, and a voice stopped me cold. "Hello?" My heart lurched, my hand frozen on the knob. A man stood inside, late 50s, gray mustache, average build, his smile warm but his eyes sharp like a predator sizing up prey. It took a moment to recognize him, Garrett, the superhost. from the Airbnb profile. "You startled me," I said, my voice thin, a forced laugh masking my unease. "I didn't expect anyone here." His smile held, but his gaze pierced, as if he saw the cracks in my soul. "I greet all my guests. Jack, you're my livelihood after all. Come in, we have matters to discuss." The living room was a time capsule, its armchairs worn, the coffee table scarred by decades of use. The air smelled of old books, sea salt, and something earthy, like a grave freshly turned. Faded photographs lined the walls, stern faces staring, their eyes tracking me as I sat. Garrett took the opposite chair, his posture calm but commanding, his smile a mask. The silence was heavy, pressing against my chest, his presence a riddle I couldn't solve. "What did you want to discuss?" I asked, unease coiling in my gut. He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his jacket, its edges frayed, its texture rough like ancient parchment. He slid it across the table and it stopped before me, a silent command. I reached to unfold it, but his hand shot up. "Don't. You'll have time later. Just listen." His voice was low, each word deliberate, a warning carved in stone. "This house has been in my family for generations. Staying here can be rewarding, but dangerous if you're not careful." I smirked, expecting a ghost story. "Don't tell me it's haunted." His smile vanished, his eyes cold, stripping away my bravado. I gestured for him to continue, my throat tight. "On that paper are rules. Follow everyone. No exceptions. Do this and your stay will be pleasant." He stood, moving to the door, then paused. "Follow the rules, Jack. Break them and you're in for a bumpy ride." He left, the door closing softly, the sound echoing like a cell locking. I unfolded the paper, expecting rental terms, but found a list that chilled me. No lights past 11:25 p.m. No answering phones. Only Hank Penston and Jessica Covenwood allowed inside, and more. A final note read, "I will come to collect you, but only when the rental period is over, not a moment sooner." The words were a weight, a prophecy I couldn't shake. The house's silence a challenge to my disbelief. The house was quiet that first night, its silence a canvas for my words. I set up in the study, a small room with a sturdy desk. The lamp's glow warm against the dark. The ocean's roar was a distant pulse, grounding me as I wrote. 6 chapters remained. A mountain to climb, but the isolation fueled me. I typed furiously, the story unfolding, each word a step toward redemption. By midnight I'd finished 2 first drafts, rough but alive, my exhaustion tempered by triumph. I leaned back, glancing at my phone. 12:18 a.m. The lamp flickered, its light wavering, a candle in a storm. Past 11:25, Garrett, I thought, smirking at his rule. Was this about saving bulbs? The rule list sat on the coffee table, its words creeping into my mind. Do not exit the house after midnight until sunrise. I laughed, the sound sharp, defiant. The idea was absurd, a child's game. I descended the stairs, the wood cool under my feet, the house's silence heavy, as if holding its breath. I opened the front door, the night unfolding like a dream, sky blanketed with stars, their light cold. The lighthouse's beam a blade slicing the dark. The air was sharp with salt, the wind carrying the sea's breath, a song of freedom. What's this rule for, Garrett? To hide this beauty? I stepped onto the porch, lingering, the stars watching, their gaze unyielding. The defiance was sweet, a rebellion against the house's grip. I thought of Leslie, her face flashing in my mind, her laughter a memory from summers long gone. The guilt was a shadow, darkening my defiance. I should have been there for her, should have picked her up that day. The novel I'd been writing then had consumed me, its pages more real than her need. I pushed the thought away, returning inside, turning the lock, a final rule broken. Hope the house doesn't mind. I chuckled, the act trivial, a taunt. Upstairs, I collapsed into bed, the sheets soft, the room warm. Sleep claimed me, a deep plunge, but the house was awake, its silence a prelude to chaos. Sleep didn't hold. At 3:27 a.m., a thunderous banging at the front door ripped me awake. My heart raced, the room colder, the air thick with dampness, clinging to my skin like a second shadow. I stumbled out of bed, groggy, legs unsteady, and descended the stairs. The wood creaking, the photographs on the walls glinting, their faces judging. I reached the door, hand trembling, expecting, what? A storm? A lost traveler? But there was nothing, just a wall of fog, dense, unmoving, swallowing the stars, the lighthouse, the world. The air smelled of salt and decay, a stench that burrowed into my lungs, heavy, wrong. This isn't right. I closed the door, the sound too loud, and returned to bed, convincing myself it was a dream's echo, the fog a trick of the mind. The sheets were clammy, unwelcoming, but I lay down, willing sleep to return. At 4:42 a.m., a dream pulled me under. Or was it more? I stood in my publisher's office, but Garrett was there, his mustache gray, his eyes sharp, holding my manuscript. He flipped through it, pages blank, his voice a growl. Nothing here, Jack, all that time, nothing to show. He stopped at a page scrawled with his rules, the ink dripping, pooling like blood. You should have followed them. His form melted, a shadow collapsing, and I woke, heart pounding, the room spinning. Pages turned in my ears, sharp, real. My manuscript lay on the desk, fluttering, though the window was closed. A chill hit me. The window was open, the latch undone. Just the wind, I told myself, shutting it. But the lie was thin, the house's presence thicker, watching. At 5:19 a.m., a need to use the bathroom woke me. I opened the bedroom door, expecting the hallway, but found a corridor, narrow, endless, lined with doors, too many for the house. The walls pulsed, the air heavy with damp earth and rot. The floor warped, groaning underfoot. This isn't real. I rubbed my eyes, but it held, solid, undeniable. I stepped in, the walls alive, their texture rough, cold. Each door was locked, their knobs icy, unyielding. Halfway down, the bedroom door shut, a gunshot in the silence. I ran back, twisting the knob. Nothing. Panic clawed at me, my breath shallow, the hallway stretching, a tunnel with no end. I pressed on, reaching a door marked Room 371, its plaque glinting, sharp. I turned the knob, the metal burning cold, the door opening to darkness. A figure stood in the center, taller than any man, a shadow within shadow, outlined by a sickly glow. Its presence crushed me, stealing my breath. Run, you need to run. But fear rooted me, my legs locked. It stepped forward, then lunged, swallowing the light. I woke in bed, sunlight streaming, my body aching, clothes damp. A dream, I told myself, but room 371 lingered, more real than the day. The day was productive, sunlight softening the house's edges. I wrote half a chapter, tweaked earlier pages, the deadline a distant hum. But a knock at the door shattered my focus. I descended, wary, the rule list's warnings echoing. A man stood outside, his smile too wide, too polished. Can I help you? I asked, voice tight. I'm hoping to help you, he said, his tone smooth, rehearsed. I'm Hank, a locksmith from the mainland. Garrett sent me to check the locks. I grabbed the rule list, noting Hank Penston. You're on the list, I said, stepping aside. Splendid. "May I come in?" His smile stretched, unnatural, his eyes glinting like a predator's. I nodded, unease prickling my skin. "What a lovely place," he remarked, sauntering upstairs, his footsteps too light, as if he barely touched the floor. The house swallowed. Him, its silence heavier now, the air thick with a scent like damp wood and salt. I returned to the study, trying to write, but the words stalled, Hank's presence a shadow over my thoughts. Hours passed. No sound of tools, no clink of metal, just silence, oppressive, alive. This isn't right. Rule 7, never lock your doors. Why a locksmith on an island with no threats? And Rule 3, ask for last names. I hadn't. The realization was a blade, sharp and cold. "Hank!" I called, my voice echoing, unanswered. I climbed, the stairs searching every room. Empty, the shadows deeper, the house larger, as if hiding him. I thought of Leslie, her face a fleeting memory, her laughter drowned by the day she died. My failure to pick her up, my obsession with the first novel. It haunted me, mirroring my doubt about Hank. Returning downstairs, I froze. Hank sat on the couch, my manuscript in his hands, his smile a knife. "This is pretty good, Jack. Happy ending, or does the man succumb to his demons?" My heart pounded, my mouth dry. "Hank, what's your last name?" His grin widened, eyes glinting. "Reedon. Hank Reedon. Not Penston." The rule list burned in my hand, its warning clear. I forced a smile, my mind racing. "Hey, do you mind tossing me my phone?" I asked, pointing to the coffee table. Hank stared, his eyes calculating, then grabbed it, tossing it with a flick. I caught it, fingers trembling, and bolted for the door. "I'll be right back," I called, sprinting to the island's edge, the wind tearing at me. The ocean roared, waves crashing, a chorus of chaos. I dialed Garrett, no answer. The ferry station, nothing. Then Charlotte called, her name a ghost. Against every instinct, I answered. "Leslie's dead, Jack," she said, venomous. Leslie, struck by a car I should have prevented, my failure etched in her loss. "It's your fault. Rot in that house." Her voice turned inhuman, a growl. Rule 2. Do not answer your phone. I hung up, tears streaming, and dialed Jessica Covenwood, the only call allowed. She answered after 2 rings, her voice sharp. "You broke a rule, didn't you?" I admitted to several, voice cracking. "Did you let anyone in?" Hank Reedon," she sighed, frustration heavy. "Go back to the house, but act natural. No sudden moves. Any change could set him off." I obeyed, steps deliberate, the wind a cold lash. Hank stood at the house's back, smile unchanged. "What are you up to, Jack?" Jessica's voice cut through. "Repeat what I say." I did, voice steady. "Hank, Garrett wants you to check the front door lock, it's sticking." Hank nodded, moving away, his presence a shadow lingering. Jessica guided me to an electrical box in a tree stump, its angles unnatural. "Pull the lever, wait 10 seconds, reset it. It'll wipe the slate clean." Hank reappeared, flickering, his voice sharp. "Jack, what are you doing?" Jessica urged. "Now!" I pulled the lever, counting, heart pounding. Hank's form dissolved, a scream fading. I reset the lever, he was gone, the stump sinking. Relief flooded me, but Jessica's voice was curt. "We did it." The line died, her frustration clear. I returned to the house, the rule list a lifeline, vowing obedience. That night I followed every rule, no lights after 11:25, no phone, no locked doors. The house was still, its shadows soft, the ocean's roar a lullaby. I lay in bed, the sheets warm, the air clean, free of decay. Sleep came deep, dreamless, a void that cradled me, the best rest in years. I saw Leslie's face, not in pain but smiling, a fleeting gift. The guilt was there, but quieter, the house's grip loosening. I woke hopeful, sunlight streaming, the study inviting. I wrote a few pages, words tentative but alive, the novel stirring. The house felt different, its silence a truce, not a threat. But peace was fragile. A pause before the storm, the rules a chain I couldn't break. At 2:12 a.m. I woke, Leslie's laughter in my mind, her tiny hand in mine. Footsteps outside my room snapped me alert, soft, deliberate. I opened the door, expecting the hallway, but found the house's entrance, then the living room, spaces shifting. That hallway appeared, narrow, endless, doors silent. Room 371 stood, at the end its plaque glinting. It opened, the shadow emerging, towering, its glow sickly. The hallway shrank, the figure closing in. Move, now! I slammed the door, reopening to the bedroom, heart pounding. At 3:47 a.m., voices taunted. Enjoying your stay, Jack? Rule 6. Do not converse. I hid under the covers, their words malicious. A tug on the sheets jolted me. The room was empty, but a hand-shaped dent marked the bed, cold, unnatural. Leslie's face haunted me, her loss a wound reopened, the house feeding on my pain. On night 6, I wrote feverishly. The novel's end in sight, fear fueling focus. At 11:24 p.m., I glanced at my phone, time a slap. I raced through the house, shutting lights, knocking over furniture, shattering a vase. The desk lamp was last, my hand trembling. But the phone read 11:26 p.m. as I clicked it off. The bedroom door sealed, a black vortex rising from the bed, swirling, alive. The air thickened, decay choking me. Get out. I smashed the window. Glass, shattering and landed in shrubs passing out. I dreamt of Leslie, her scream as a car struck her. My failure replayed. Waking at 11:56 p.m., covered in glass, I scrambled inside, the house waiting, its shadows hungry. In the living room, Leslie sat, identical to the day she died, her dress pristine, eyes too bright. Hi, Daddy, she said, her voice a dagger. I ran to her, heart breaking, but her eyes flickered black, a void. You're not real, I choked, backing away. You killed me, she said, her scream shattering windows, glass raining. I fled upstairs, dialing Jessica, voice broken. I'm going to die tonight. Hold on, I'm coming, she said. Her urgency was a lifeline, the house's grip tightening, Leslie's scream echoing. A knock at 1 a.m. Jessica stood at the door, black hair, freckled cheeks, her sass cutting the fear. Leslie reappeared, shrieking. Jessica grabbed me, navigating shifting rooms, kitchen, study, hallway, until we reached that corridor, room 371 at its end. We're going there, she said. I resisted, fear choking, but her warmth pulled. Forward. We knocked 3 times, the shadow welcoming us, transforming into a glowing orb. The room was the bedroom, pristine, the storm gone. This is the house's safe space, Jessica said, a moment frozen in time. We read my manuscript, Jessica's praise soothing. She lay beside me, hand on my chest. What would Leslie want? I sobbed, confessing my guilt. We kissed, solace, fleeting, but a voice warned, she's a seductress. I asked her last name. Her face changed, eyes engorged, lunging. I dodged, hiding under the bed, her footsteps circling. At dawn, I pushed her through the window, her form disintegrating. Ashes carried by the wind. The house stilled, my guilt a quiet scar. Hours later, a knock. I let Garrett in, but the Airbnb app showed checkout at 12 p.m. My phone turned to 12 hours, revealing my error, letting him in early, breaking the final rule. Not Garrett. I ran to the ferry, the real Garrett waving me aboard. I looked. Back at the house, its secret sealed, my guilt lighter, my novel complete.